This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. So yesterday, I covered the bulk of day one of this Colombia trip, but I wanted to make a separate video specifically for this forum talk that Meghan and Harry were giving yesterday called the Responsible Technology Digital Forum. What we need to start calling these forums/summits that involve the youth brainwashing sessions, because that's exactly what these are. Now, we have seen Harry and Meghan do enough of these forums and talks to know the language that they're using, which is the socialist language. Words like community, service, purpose-driven, collective, empower, which is a code word for brainwash, all words used to prey on the vulnerable youth. This is why Harry and Meghan are specifically focused on going after a certain demographic and age range. You notice that the more vulnerable and disenfranchised these people are, the more Harry and Meghan want to exploit them and use them for their own selfish gain, which is exactly what's going on here in Colombia. Now, a couple days ago, I did this video giving a brief overview of Franny Marquez and possible reasons for why Harry and Meghan are going to Colombia. It's not so much to focus on the cyberbullying and caring about making the online space safer. It really is about Agenda 2030 and the globalist attempt to control the people, not only from information being seen, but as well as what people can say or think online. In this video, I speculated that the funds to pay for Harry and Meghan while in Colombia might be coming from the U.S. government, particularly the USAID foreign policy bucket, as Franny Marquez is a CIA asset. You know who else is being called a CIA asset? Maria Ressa, seen on this panel with Megs.
I hope every person sitting in this audience will realize that this is the moment when you have to ask yourself the question of what you are going to do to demand better, right? EQ plus, if you are brown or black or marginalized in the real world, you are further marginalized online. If you are a woman leader, the attacks you have to weather are far more than we have ever had to do before. So what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? And think that it is not just for you and the world you want to build, it's for your children.
Ah, yes, the standard "it's for the children" playbook. This is what they're going on now. Back in 2020, this was not Maria Ressa's position. Neither was it for Prince Harry or Meghan Markle. The conversation during the Time 100 talks with Prince Harry and ex-CIA Renée DiResta from Stanford, along with Maria Ressa, CEO of Rappler, talking about the public's demand for truth, indicating that journalists no longer are the gatekeepers of information. And this problem sort of started in 2016. Oh, when the election was lost to Hillary Clinton. Now all of a sudden there's a problem with misinformation online. Never happened before then, right? In any case, this is what prompted all of this censorship, the need to control information, because remember what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop? All these folks were a part of suppressing and hiding that information. Prior to being the CEO of Rappler, Maria was working at CNN. That should tell you enough.
What changes have you seen, Maria, in how the news industry sees and carries out its duty to inform all of us?
We have never been under such intense attack. In this environment, it's far more insidious, and the tactics are the same globally, and it is enabled by technology. So, in our case in the Philippines, exponential attacks on social media, bottom up, a lie told a million times becomes a fact.
If you notice, these people know what the tactics are. She just said, if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. Well, what if Meghan and Harry have been doing this whole entire time? They fully understand what these tactics are, and they're using psychology to flip this onto the public.
That began happening in 2016, so 4 years ago. And in 2016, they seeded the narrative, journalist equals criminal. 2017, you have President Duterte himself saying the same thing top down in his State of the Nation address. In 2018, the weaponization of the law happened, 11 cases filed against us. 2019, I had 8 arrest warrants. I was arrested twice in a 5-week period. And 2020, I was convicted in one of the first cases.
And the reason why is she's known to push propaganda. And you notice here, the playing the victim is always the default by these people.
Journalist equals criminal. The world is turned upside down. I guess my main concern is this. I think journalists around the world have done our jobs. We have held the line. We are telling you the facts.
I cannot believe she said this with a straight face. For 4 years, they trashed Donald Trump and they lied about him. Not only did they lie about that, but then they had the world suffer during COVID, lying to the public when a lot of the facts that they so put out were not true or proven. And now they're doing it with this climate nonsense.
Because without facts, you can't have truth. Without this, you can't have trust. Without any of these, democracy as we know it is dead. And I have been saying that for 4 years. I think the last part is with elections coming up in the United States.
Like as if it didn't happen prior to 2016 when there was a different president in office.
Without facts, how can you have integrity of elections? With this kind of insidious manipulation that's happening online, how can voters choose, right? How can we know that this is the will of the people? I mean, these are huge issues, right? And I think we need a global collective to try to deal with this.
There's that word again, collective. And how rich is it that this woman is talking about the insidious manipulation when at the time of this broadcast for this interview that Harry did, the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed?
It's a war of information, right? One of which you've both been warning of for 5 years, more?
It's really, I became a journalist because I knew information is power.
Information is power.
And I wanted to fight for justice. We shine the light. That's the mission of journalism.
Oh, so it's about shining the light. If you guys really care about the kids, then why is nobody shining a light on all the children being trafficked and abused? Inquiring minds would like to know, Maria.
This time shows you more than at any other time that information really is power. And what happened, what triggered it is news groups lost our gatekeeping powers to technology.
Let's hear that one more time.
Lost our gatekeeping powers to technology. And technology abdicated responsibility for protecting the public sphere.
Never once did Harry nor Meghan or any of these folks on this Time 100 Talks discuss putting children as priority and online safety. A couple final thoughts that I have on Maria Ressa is, first of all, she's supporting Meghan and Harry, who are proven known liars. She loses all credibility in my eyes. Second of all, Maria Ressa is supposed to be an advocate of free speech. Listen to what Jimmy Dore had to say.
Member on The Intercept, and wait till you hear what she has to say about Julian Assange, right? What does she have to say?
What do you think about Julian Assange's arrest? Do you think that that's good or bad for journalists?
I have a different view because I think that the wholesale dumping of WikiLeaks actually isn't journalism.
So now even Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes will tell you Julian Assange is doing journalism. That's why he won all those journalism awards. So what this is showing you she won the Nobel Prize, by the way, and she's working with the CIA.
I told you. What did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. And when did I tell you? A long time ago. And what did I say will happen when I told you? Exactly what just happened.
And she's repeating CIA talking points. Isn't that interesting? Well, let's watch this. If I were a media beat, I'd cover this. The Intercept, a U.S. journalism outlet which brands itself as fearless and adversarial to U.S. state power, appoints to its board an individual from the National Endowment for Democracy, an arm of U.S. state power.
Oh, and who talked about this in her recent video? This kid did.
An individual from the National Endowment for Democracy, an arm of U.S. state power. Goes right to the board at the Intercept. To my knowledge, the Intercept is the first major U.S. journalism outlet to have someone from a U.S. government-fueled funded organization, a U.S. intel front at that.
I told you so, 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 I told you.
Sitting on its board of directors. Truly a milestone for independent journalism. Man, very well said, and good catch by Aaron Mate. Of course, he's a real journalist. He just got another award for being an independent journalist and telling the truth, which is what The Intercept can never do. And that's why the people who work at The Intercept are embarrassments. The Intercept's announcement of Ressa, her name is Ressa, by the way, Marissa Ressa, I guess is how you say it. Her appointment to its board they describe her at The Intercept as globally recognized leader in independent journalism. It fails to mention her recent appointment to a U.S. government-funded regime change organization. They don't mention that. The Intercept doesn't mention that. And there she is. There she is. And that's it. The National Endowment for Democracy, which is, we know what that is. That's a intelligence front that goes and helps overthrow other governments for the CIA and Americans' imperialism. And she's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and she joins the Movement for Democracy at NED. So she went right from the Peace Prize right to the CIA.
I hope by now that people are starting to see that this is more than just Harry and Meghan throwing stuff up in the air and trying to make it stick. They have been working in this censorship complex before they even came over to the United States. That's why I keep saying that visa information is going to be very important. And I do believe that it will tell a different story than what they've told the world, since they've lied about everything. When it comes to Harry and his titles, they're not going anywhere. It didn't matter if the conservative Tories were in power or now the Labour Party. They're all part of the same team. Keir Starmer is not going to remove the titles from someone who is supportive of the agenda. And this little Colombia trip is very much a part of being a part of that agenda. When you look at the sponsors for this forum, you see Luminate up there. Anybody have any idea who Luminate is? Well, let me show you. So Luminate is a global foundation that works on impacting and changing society, particularly affecting global policy as well as United States policy. So while they say that they're trying to give voices to the underrepresented, it's all bullshit. Luminate is part of the Omidar Group. The Omidar Group is a part of the censorship industrial complex. Pierre and Pam Omidar have tremendous influence in our elections, as they are one of the globalists who does have that kind of power. So no shocker that they are here supporting Meghan and Harry, because they are a part of this responsible youth power tech fund, whatever brainwashing initiative that they're, funding. So here's what the Duchess of Sussex had to say in an extra low voice to make her sound somewhat intelligent and authoritative.
I think from my personal standpoint, while you can hear experts and activists, I approach it from a very, very human level as well, and also an emotional perspective.
So what are you saying, Meghan, that the experts and the activists are not human or don't have the ability to feel things, but you can? Or is it because you don't qualify for either of those two categories, so you need to justify why you're sitting up there in the first place?
Perspective from the place that I sit in the world right now.
Because it's about me and my experience. I don't care about your experience. My experience is what you need to listen to, okay? In the place that I sit. Meghan is an arrogant, spoiled, nasty little millionaire who's sitting in a 16-bathroom, tacky-looking Olive Garden castle.
And for me, the most important place that I sit in the world right now is as a mother.
Liar.
You know you're a liar, Meghan, because if you did care about those children, you would not be so selfish to keep them away from their grandparents. But you are. So spare us with the most important position or whatever job you have as mom.
So I look at it through the lens of what my children, our children, are going to adopt.
Here we go with the Meghanese, always through Meghan's lens. And then you notice the vocabulary that she's using. Our children. No, Meghan, you can't have our children. In fact, children need to be kept away from you. And this is how Marxist communists think. They want the state to own your children. No.
Our children are going to adopt as they get older, and how we can keep them safe, because I do believe all of us agree, despite whatever disparities there are throughout the world, no one contests the fact that we want to keep our children safe.
Oh, really, Meghan? You really want to keep kids safe? Well, tell your Sussex squad to back the F off the Wales's children, because right now you are putting a target on their back by funding and supporting an online terrorist organization that is harassing, doxing, and threatening people. How about that? Here's the thing, Meghan, as well as the social media companies and the people who have created these tools, as well as the government, all understand how psychology works. They all understand how information can lock people in and get them addictive. And here's the hypocrisy on full display, because it's these very same people who are responsible for the hatred that we see online. It is them who are stoking the fire and gaslighting people. I mean, Meghan has a full squad dedicated to targeting and saying very hateful things. So, Meghan, you can go ahead and shove that microphone up your ass because nobody is buying it.
Maybe your grandmother used to say it to you also. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
That's the goal of censorship, right? They don't want you saying anything. Meghan, you're such a clown. Really, you truly are a clown.
But what's happened? The digital age has almost created a culture where if you don't have anything cruel to say, don't say anything at all.
Because it sounds like you and your husband are not mature enough to handle it. Perhaps maybe the problem is you. You see, the big problem that we have with Meghan and Harry is that they have this system that is behind them and supporting all of these lies. So when you see Maria Ressa and Renee DiResta, and we see the whole censorship complex, embrace them and allow them to pull off stunts like this, then you realize what you're up against. So Meghan is going to continue to keep doubling down on the narratives that she has put out there that were highly inflammatory. She's also never going to denounce the squad, because the squad is very much a part of this engine. See, Kakala is also guilty of using these type of people to go ahead and do the exact same thing in this presidential race. She did this, or the Biden-Harris campaign did this back in 2020. It's all the same characters, is what I want people to understand. This is a political system that Harry and Meghan are very much a part of. And these two, as well as the rest of these globalists, are going after the impressionable youth, getting them to mobilize. When you hear that word mobilize, that came from Obama. This is all part of the indoctrination of communism. This is deeply rooted within not only the education system, but the universities, as well as to the workplace. And that's why all of the Western world is going through the same exact thing. It's because of these people. And in order for all of this to work, you can have people challenging ideas, hence the reason why they are desperately trying to shut down free speech. And this is why this racist predator is going after the youth by giving them money. Meghan and Harry are the modern day Nazis, and that's my opinion. Those people do in fact exist.
As we continue with this work, we continue learning and investing and grant giving to young adults who can be change makers and are being change makers in this space.
So now, listening to a little bit of Harry, he indicates that they've been working on this parent network now for 3 years, which is a lie. They all of a sudden had to change course because they were exposed being involved with violating First Amendment rights. So now they're focused on the kids.
A few weeks ago, and it's been going now for about 3 years, officially a few weeks, but we've been...
So wrapping this video up, I just want to raise this point, and this is just some food for thought, just to get you thinking. Harry in this forum decides to blast online lies for sparking the chaos on the streets, referencing the Southport riots. So we know that these globalists have been going after Elon Musk because they can't control him. They didn't have a problem with the BLM riots back in 2020 when that kicked off. But how is it that now all of a sudden online, social media is to blame for the chaos that's happening in the streets? I'm just putting that out there. But as far as Harry raising this point, let's think back to the assassination attempt with Donald Trump. As a result of evidence being able to be shared on X freely, it does look like this was an inside job by our own government. I can't come to that conclusion because I don't know all the details, but this is the word on the street. The question that I have, or what I want to focus on, is the actual shooter. Since this happened, nobody has seen whether there be a funeral for this guy or whatever happened to the body. Nothing. And what I see similar to that is with these stabbings in Southport of those 3 little girls. Nobody's talking about the person who did this heinous crime. You almost have to wonder, was this intentional? Because, and the reason why I say this is because it just so happened 2 days prior, Harry's on television saying, well, I'm so afraid to go back to the UK because he's afraid of a knife or acid attack. And many people at the time were like, where is this coming from? And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, we had this horrific event that happened with those 3 innocent little girls. And you can't help but wonder, this guy that did that, nobody has any information about him. His Facebook and all his social media had been wiped, no information whatsoever. I could be wrong, but there wasn't that much information as to where they took him, if he's in a juvenile cell or if he is where the adults are, if he was let go on house arrest. Nobody knows, or at least I haven't been able to find. And when you look at the press, did they hunt down the parents to get a statement from them? Or did they issue a statement saying that they're really sorry that their son went ahead and killed 3 innocent little girls? I don't recall that. When you look at the similarities between the shooter and this person who did the stabbing, it's really interesting that the media had similar things to say about both of them, that they were lone wolf and that it was mental health. Some people here in the United States speculate that the shooter actually was psychologically manipulated, or MK Ultra'd. Could it be something like that happening in the UK in order to trigger off this response? I find it highly suspect that Harry, just right before all of this happened, went ahead and threw that point out there. And then the immediate response of the UK government is to lock people up for posting things on social media. I personally think that there is a connection here, as these globalists recognize that free speech is hindering or getting in the way of them fulfilling this agenda that they have. Harry and Meghan are very much a part of it. Now, if you don't believe the things that I say or think that I'm being conspiratorial, then listen to Mike Flynn, who is a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General who was the 24th U.S. National Security Advisor, on what is going on currently. If this doesn't wake you up, then do your own research and see for yourself. I'll put the link to the full video below. I highly recommend watching it, but here's just a little taste of what was discussed on the YouTube channel Redacted.
Been at the top levels of the intelligence community, to include the director of national intelligence level. I was the assistant director and running one of the largest intel agencies in the world, the Defense Intelligence Agency, as well as serving as the most senior intelligence officer in the Department of Defense, the entire Department of Defense. And for a very brief time, was the national security advisor to the United States of America, under President Donald J. Trump, where I was fully read into the entire nuclear code program. So I have, a lot of depth of knowledge and insight into the kinds of enemies and opponents that we are facing around the world, and have studied enough of what we are up against globally, but certainly for the last couple of presidents, not counting Trump. I think Trump was an anomaly. In fact, it is an anomaly and still is, that we have been being transitioned and transformed, like the word that Barack Obama used, fundamentally, into a socialist system of government, where the federal government has really taken over much more authority, taken on the reins of power, even over the legislative branch and clearly over the judicial branch. 2020 is one of the most, dishonorable elections that we've ever had in the nation's history, because for anybody to think that there wasn't fraud involved, and not one Republican governor has ever stood up and said maybe there was just a little bit of fraud in 2020, because they all can't stand Trump. None of them. I'm talking about every governor, and every one of them has had anti-Trump, statements or whatever. And I'm talking about Republicans, never mind the Democrats. So now we're here. Okay, so that was 2020. Now we're here in 2024, less than 90 days before the next major election, and we just experienced an internal coup. So these are phases that I'm talking about. So the next phase is, and it's not the final phase, because we're getting ready to go into another one here. The next phase was we got to get rid of Biden. I mean, think about it. Joe Biden was put at Camp David for, I think, 4 or 5 days prior to that debate to rest and to prepare for that debate. There's no way in the world. In fact, what they did was they screwed Joe Biden. He came into that debate totally unprepared, not rested, and like he was well past his bedtime and got crushed in that debate. That gave them the immediate excuse to introduce, the next candidate, right? Kamala Harris. So out goes Joe. That's an internal coup. That's probably the third or fourth phase of this thing, to make sure that they stay in power. And now you got Kamala Harris. I'm not a bullshitter. I'm going to be matter of fact. Here's what we're facing, and I'm all for Trump. And I'm going to go out there and like I've been doing around this country to get people to understand that Donald Trump right now is our savior. If we don't get him in office, we're going to become a communist country here damn near overnight. So who's in charge? Who's running the show? Well, you have the World Economic Forum, okay, and you can go dig into all these people. Klaus Schwab is the sort of the CEO of that. You've got George Soros. You've got Barack Obama internal to the United States of America. So those other two are external. They're part of this globalist alliance. You have Xi out of China, who is he's holding a lot of reins over people here in this country, to include those in the White House. And you have Barack Obama, right? And Barack Obama, and who is Barack Obama? What is Barack Obama's background? Who's controlling Barack Obama? Because Barack Obama is not somebody who is, wakes up every morning and he's in charge of everything. Barack Obama is somebody who is dangled by this other sort of global alliance that does exist. And that global alliance, and I wrote a few notes down, because what we're going to experience between now and the election that are outside of our control, meaning the United States of America, unless we have a president, and Joe Biden is still the president. I call him a sundowner because he's only awake from 8 o'clock to probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then when the sun goes down, he goes to bed. So I call him a sundowner president. So, so these are the people that are, this alliance of people that are in charge, and they stay in communications with each other. They actually, in many cases, are very public about what their plans are and what they're doing. In fact, the closest advisor to Klaus Schwab recently said that we don't really even need to have a U.S. election, that artificial intelligence can predict the outcome of the election, can predict the outcome of what the American people want. Well, then, these are people, it's the closest advisor. His name is Harari to Klaus Schwab and George Soros, and he's very close to Barack Obama as well. So we're going to still have our election, but as this guy also says, Harari now, he also says this will probably be the last election in the United States of America, the last presidential election in the United States of America. It's like, I kind of go, what? Where is this coming from? Why does this guy believe this? And these are the people that's part of this alliance. And when I say alliance, I'm not talking about China, Russia, Iran, and those countries exist, and they are also part of a nation-state alliance that is against the United States of America. So, so what does all this mean? Well, between now and November, we're likely to experience a complete global economic shift to a digital currency that Biden has already signed off on almost 3 years ago. People can go look up the executive order 14067. 14067. It's on central bank digital currencies. That is that we are already in play here. You've heard these guys talking about it. Even Trump talked about digital. He talked about not allowing it, but he's not in charge, right? So Trump, I know, has talked about Bitcoin and some of these other, cyber currencies. But this digital currency is something that the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus 25 other nations that are now aligned with them, which represent about 85% of the world's population. So this is a conversation that's going on right now, and they meet this October for a summit, and that summit is going to be chaired by, Vladimir Putin, who's totally pissed off, at the world right now because of the Western world, NATO particularly, because of what they are now doing to try to start a nuclear war in Eastern Europe. One, the economy, a global economic shift that we don't really have any control over. And what will it shift from? It'll shift away from the U.S. dollar as the currency of choice for global trade, what we call the petrodollar, which began basically back in the early 1970s, 1973 to be specific, and it'll shift more to a gold-backed currency. So you use your currency, whether it's the ruble, the dollar, the yuan, and you're going to have to back it by gold, not necessarily by oil, which is what has always been backed by. The second thing that we are likely to face is another bio attack. The World Health Organization has already come out and talked about I think it's H5N6 is where we're at now. The swine flu, the bird flu. So they've already talked about that. Monkeypox is another one. And these are actually more deadly than this, advanced flu that the COVID was, right? Which was a Chinese introduced bio attack. Okay, just like fentanyl was introduced by China, which is a weapon system. So this monkeypox, this H5N6, this whatever this other bio attack, World Health Organization has already come out and said, that we are potentially, and I think we may see something this week, maybe next week, about a declared global a health emergency. The third thing that is likely to happen, and this now the Middle East and the war, the wars against Israel, and I'm 100% behind Israel because you've never heard of an Israeli Jew cutting the head off of a Christian, right? I mean, I'm so sick of these people that are these pro-Palestinian people in our country and around the world that are like against the Jews or against Israel. Give me a break. And sorry, folks, but that's the way it is. So this is the third component of what could happen in the next 90 days that we cannot control. And what we can't control in the Middle East is the real potential that Iran escalates the war against Israel by coordinating and converging with all of their capabilities, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthi rebels, and Iran at the same time against Israel, to basically try to, like the leadership of Iran has said, to try to take try to wipe the state of Israel off the map. Okay, Israel as a piece of geography will never go away. The state of Israel as a nation state could be wiped off the face of the earth with the ordinance that those entities that I just outlined have, meaning Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, with missile ordnance and rocket ordnance that they have. They have an abundance, more than the Iron Dome of Israel could handle. And the Israelis know it. And frankly, these guys know it because they're not certain about what the U.S. may or may not, how we might support Israel or how we might retaliate. And I'm telling you, our military right now is woke, sad. I'm sorry to say that. Not our rank and file. And I want to make sure I state that. Not our rank and file, but our leadership. And I'm afraid that we are in a position right now where if that happens and the Chinese decide to do something out in the Pacific, like try to take Taiwan, or Russia decides we've had enough of this bullshit and we're going to now attack fully into Ukraine with different types of weapon systems. I mean, this is all right now, Clayton, playing out as I sit here talking to you. None of what I'm saying is conspiracy theory or theoretical, okay? This is all very real. These are the players that are in play. And when I look inside of the United States of America and I think about the American people, who I love, I love the what's in our DNA, which is freedom. And I know that there's a lot of Americans out there like saying, not over my dead body, are we going to lose this country? Well, I'm just telling you, folks, if the primaries, and these are the Republican primaries mainly, if the primaries are an example of the complacency of the American people that are conservatives who are registered to vote, the primaries in the United States of America to date in this year's primary, which is the most consequential set of elections we've ever had, we are less than 35% turnout. Okay? Of registered voters who could vote, we're less than 35% turnout. In some states, it's less than 30. I was in Nebraska, I was in Nebraska not too long ago, and their turnout for their primaries was 27%. So when people come to me and go, oh, we got to do something, we got to do more, and all this stuff on social media and all the outcrying and all the people that show up to rallies for Trump, the tens of thousands of people, and you get inspired by the numbers of people that show up to these rallies. It's like, well, why aren't they turning out to vote? They're not. And so if everybody's going, well, I'm going to wait until the general election to vote. Well, guess what? That means we have a lot of people who are going to win in the House and the Senate and some of the down ballot voting that are not America First people. We are going to have a lot of never Trumpers. Okay. I mean, the House of Representatives, I worked very hard with a couple of groups of people, but one.
I was such a fraud.